Hello and welcome to What's Rosebud? Do you know what Rosebud is?
I know.
Oh, good. Do you know what Rosebud is? Okay.
They spent like an hour and a half on that, didn't
On
they?
that, explaining what that is.
Yeah, and then they never found out, did they?
Not in the movie.
No.
We found out, but nobody in the movie knows. I mean, the reporter thinks that it's an idea, it's a concept. Isn't that his whole thing?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's also dramatic irony. That's what that's called.
Dramatic irony.
When the audience knows something.
Ironing.
Not dramatic ironing. That's something different.
I like the idea of just ironing and dramatic music in the background. That's all I need for the intro, right? And then
Do you want to explain what the series is?
Welcome to What's Rosebud, where we watch old movies that either both of us haven't seen or one of us hasn't seen, and then we talk about it.
Iconic.
Why? Iconic. They have to be iconic. They have to be classic. Well, they don't have to be classic, but they have to be, like...
Important.
Important. For some reason.
Yeah.
And then we discuss, are they really important? Are they really iconic? Is there any reason at all why people talk about them, or is it one of those heady intellectual things where it's like, that's the first time a thing happened?
Yeah.
But it's not actually interesting.
Why did we watch this?
Because everyone has seen this movie.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and everybody thinks it's good, but was it really good? And for the record, the movie we watched, The Sound of Music.
So what were you expecting?
I don't know what I was expecting. I mostly was expecting music and something about the hills.
I was expecting about an hour and 40 minutes of singing. I know that the hills come alive with The Sound of Music. I know that there's a problem with Maria. And I know there's a bunch of children.
You are almost right in saying that you got about an hour and 40 minutes of music. That's almost accurate.
True. I didn't realize the movie is 3 hours long.
It's so long. For the record, we did not watch this in one sitting. It was late.
Yeah.
I was tired. I had to start my new temp job. And it was like, you know what? We're going to stop right at the intermission. Start it up again.
Well, because, to be honest, we didn't know that it was 3 hours until we went to rent it. And we even had a heart-stopping moment where it appeared to be 4 hours long.
That was like, oh shoot, what have we done?
But that turned out to be the bonus material at the end, which we didn't make it through.
We didn't make it through the bonus material. It was Julie Andrews taking us through the town that they shot it in, which I can't remember.
Salzburg.
Salzburg, that's right. They shot it in Salzburg, which I've been through but didn't stay at.
So I've seen some musicals before, some of the big ones. I'm not a musical fan. I don't dislike them, but I'm not like... I don't go see them. So I've seen West Side Story.
I haven't seen West Side Story.
It's good.
That's probably one we can do for this.
Yeah, it's worth seeing. I've seen Guys and Dolls.
I've seen Guys and Dolls.
What are some of the other big ones?
Well, there's Singing in the Rain.
I have not seen that.
I've seen it. That'd be another good one to do for this. Hey, we're coming up with new episodes.
Oh, I've seen Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
I haven't seen that one.
That's a musical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not... Yeah.
I like musicals, and
Is Mary Poppins a musical? She sings in it.
I don't know that that's a musical.
She sings.
She sings, but I don't know that that's a musical.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Genre, we'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
I liked La La Land. I didn't quite like it as much as everybody else, but I thought it was a very good movie, so there's a resurgence, if you will, in people thinking about musicals, even if...
I've seen the musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yes, which is one of the better episodes of TV. It's a fantastic episode.
It's got the same problem as La La Land, where they're not singers, you know?
They're not singers, yeah.
They do good.
They do good, in Buffy and in La La Land, but it's different. Like Julie Andrews...
She can sing.
She can sing.
I've always longed for adventure, to do the things I've never dared. Now here I'm facing adventure, then why am I so scared?
Let's talk about The Sound of Music!
In my extensive 5-minute Wikipedia research, it's one of the highest grossest
It's grossest. So icky.
It's disgusting. In my extensive 5-minute Wikipedia research, it is one of the highest grossing films of all time when adjusted for inflation. I don't entirely understand how they adjust, and it seems like, depending on what you're looking at, it's like the 6th or the 3rd, but it's up there.
Yeah, it's not box office necessarily. That's over its lifetime.
It has to do with ticket sales, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's way up there.
Yeah, and
Gone with the Wind is the top one, which I actually haven't seen, but you have.
I have seen Gone with the Wind. That's a 4-hour movie.
Oh, really?
I've also seen Lawrence of Arabia, which is another 4-hour movie.
I've seen Lawrence of Arabia.
I don't know how long Gone Over the Wind is. Maybe it's not 4 hours, but they're both really long.
Yeah. So, it's important in that sense. I mean, it made a shit ton of money. It was a musical first, and it's one of the first couple movies Julie Andrews was in.
Yeah, it's one of her first couple movies. She was in Mary Poppins before this, as we said, and some other movies, but that's kind of her big one. And and they weren't that far apart in years either, so she went from Mary Poppins to, I think, Sound of Music.
They're a couple years apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about Julie Andrews, like, her history before this or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, she's a singer. You know? She's not one of those, like, they found her at a soda jerk on Sunset type situation.
Pulled her right out of the...
But I don't know what her actual history is.
Yeah. Well, and she doesn't do many singing movies now, right?
Her voice got messed up later in life. I mean, she did a number of movies. She was in Victoria.
She's in the Princess Diary movies?
Yes, I don't think she sings.
No, she doesn't sing in those, but I know those are like some of her bigger, well, those are not that recent anymore, but yeah.
There was a lawsuit over what happened to her throat. I don't know what came of it, but it was not... at least until the 80s or 90s that happened. But I don't think she can sing the same way she used to. And she's still alive.
Yeah, she's still alive. Well, she's not that old, is she? She's in her 60s? Or?
No, she's older than that.
Oh, is she? Oh. So let's talk about the movie itself. Pretty movie.
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous movie.
Aerials.
Lots of aerial shots. No drones yet.
Sweeping over the hills as Julie Andrews sings. That's beautiful.
Those are pretty awesome. The shots are really awesome. There's some of the close-ups have a lot of soft focus. And like some of the medium shots aren't as well composed as I'd like. But tons of like really great aerial long shots, very pretty.
But even the house, there is no not gorgeous scenery or interiors. The house is huge. It's on a lake. There's a gate that goes straight onto the lake. She runs down, a beautiful country road.
I have confidence in sunshine. I have confidence in rain.
They run through those, like, sweeping garden shots.
They're hanging out of trees.
Salzburg is gorgeous.
Even that shot that is just looking at the door from inside, that's, like, straight onto the door, that's a beautiful shot.
The courtyard of the, I don't know what a nun house is called, but the courtyard, it's this huge cobblestone, area, and it's, every time they go there, it's just like, there's nothing there.
Of all the candidates for the novitiate, I would say Maria is the least likely.
Children.
The graveyard is fantastic.
Yeah. It's all beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the reason we think it's a classic. It's a really pretty movie, and it's got that great vintage Hollywood. I mean, I guess this is the 60s?
It's 66,
66, yeah, that's right. So it's not quite old Hollywood, but it's sort of old Hollywood going into new Hollywood, and it still has that sort of classic Hollywood cinema feel, and it really does feel like that as you're watching it.
A deer, a female deer, a drop of golden sun.
And to go with that Julie Andrews voice, I don't know good singing from bad singing, and I know that her voice is amazing.
When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
Yes, I don't know good singing from bad singing.
Actually, the only thing I know is good singing from bad singing, technically. Like, after
you don't
that,
know
I'm like...
If it's in between there somewhere, who knows?
I can't sing. I've never... I like to karaoke, but that's like
If our family sings, small animals die in the nearby vicinity.
We're genetically predisposed
towards bad singing and bad hearing.
Yeah.
No, and so... She's fantastic. Really, another reason this movie is classic to me is that Julie Andrews is fantastic.
Now, when I want you, this is what you will hear.
Oh, no, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I could never answer to a whistle. Whistles are for dogs and cats and other animals, but not for children, and definitely not for me. It would be too humiliating.
Fräulein, were you this much trouble at the Abbey?
Oh, much more, sir.
And the musical numbers are catchy. I mean, I knew some of the songs before we even saw the movie. I mean, The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music, Do, Re, Mi, Do, a deer, a female deer, although I might have learned that from The Simpsons.
Sure.
These are a few of my favorite things.
And so the music is also, I mean, Julie Andrews is fantastic. The music itself is, iconic. So together, that's probably the biggest reason people are still think about this movie and talk about it, and everybody's seen this movie.
But it's hard to imagine anyone else, Judy Garland maybe could do something like that, but it's hard to imagine another singer, another person doing it. There just wasn't, West Side Story, it's all about I remember the plot. I know some of the songs and so on, but Wizard of Oz, it's Judy Garland, and you wouldn't think of anyone else there. So it's that kind of it's like a vehicle.
Well, and
that said, I'm glad I saw it. It really is a Julie Andrews musical vehicle.
Yes, you're here for the Julie Andrews show. The
plot is setup, resolution, setup, resolution, setup, resolution.
It's not a real plot. It's real plots are this happens, therefore this happens, therefore, and it keeps going like that. This happens and then this happens. This happens and then this happens. There's a little bit of and therefore,
kind of,
but there's not a lot of follow through. Most of the follow through is character.
Yeah.
It's not focused on the story.
Yes, because she gets sent to this place where the children have already run off all the nannies.
Yeah.
She gets there. She sees how bad it really is, which we knew it was bad.
Yeah.
She has one conversation with the children where she guilts them, and then they eat a strange-looking dinner.
And they all cry.
And she guilts them into crying.
What is the matter, Marta?
Nothing.
And then she sings and dances with them.
So do ra fa mi.
And that's it. That first 30 minutes of the movie is plot.
Yeah.
That's the story and things are happening. The next hour up to the intermission is really character focused.
Well, it's romance. Then it turns into the love story.
I feel like that's the later half of that half. There's a section in there where it's really her and the kids.
Yes, well that's just the singing.
That's just the singing and dancing. And then it's the romance.
Right, and then it's Nazis.
And that's we'll get to the second half later.
I need that in more conversations.
And then it was the Nazis.
I write, unsuccessfully novels, and I think my main problem is I never have, and then it's Nazis.
And then it's Nazis.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that first half is a little bit more solid because there is plot, there's characters, and the characters are, even though the characters are, I'm going to argue that the characters are flat, Julie Andrews just holds the whole thing up and keeps going.
Yeah.
Even the romantic interest, who's Christopher Plummer, right?
Yeah.
He has a good song in there, and he has some good stuff.
Which is Christopher Plummer is so funny because I've seen him as an old man.
But I haven't seen
I made no connection in my mind. I want to put like two pictures, like here.
Here's a picture, and here's a picture.
Like I didn't know those were the same guys.
Yeah, and so he does, and both of them have some good singing, and the kids are good singers too. And then there's the later half of the first half of the romance, and that all flows fairly well. And even though the story is kind of a little meandering and is whatever, and the characters are kind of flat, it's really just Julie Andrews.
Well, it does flow. My problem is more, it flows like this.
Yeah, there's no rising tension.
It's like...
There's the first part of her getting into the house, and she has to deal with the kids, and there's some tension that rises, and then it gets resolved.
Yeah.
Liesl, were you out walking all by yourself? You know, if we washed that dress out tonight, nobody would notice it tomorrow.
But there's no real deep tension. You could maybe argue for the second half, but at no point did I think the Nazis were going to shoot them all to death.
Yeah, after the first half, there's no tension because the way it's set up in the first half leads to no tension in the second half.
Yes, all the emotional angst is resolved at the beginning of the second half, and then they end it basically with the Nazis.
With the Nazis, yeah.
But more than that, there's no real... You never really worry that things aren't going to turn out well. And this may be a part of why people like it.
Yeah, there's no... It's so lighthearted, which is a good thing, I think, in this case. It makes the...
Yeah.
It makes the second half harder to get into. But in general, I can understand why it's iconic to people because it's so lighthearted. You can kind of ignore the plot and story being low.
And I think people like things that make them happy. I'm actually not one of those people, so...
If you want to get Sarah to do anything, tell her not to do it and tell her she's bad at it.
But not just that. I like things that, like, make me feel like that tug at my heart, and I'm like, oh man, that person has a hard choice. Like, what would I do in those circumstances?
It's more than just feeling; it's feeling, and it's conflict. This movie makes you feel things. There's lots of fun stuff. There's lots of good feeling stuff, but there's no crisis really.
Yeah. I mean, they fall in love in one dance scene.
There's probably a little.
She has a little like, is she a nun or does she marry this guy? But I mean that's cake or death.
Yeah.
It's like
there is some conflict there, but it's so quick.
You don't get. She's not a good nun. So then the question of does she marry this guy or be a nun? And it's like, but you never got the sense that she loved being a nun.
You get the sense that she is very faithful to, her religion and to being a nun, but she isn't really a nun. She doesn't really work in a nun. And all the other nuns are like, we love you, but you're not a nun.
Right.
And so it's hard to get invested in that.
Yeah.
Like in that conflict.
Yeah. I don't watch that and think, God, I don't know what I'd do. Like, Sophie's Choice, like, I can't even watch, that's too much for me, but, like, this is, like, do you know Sophie's Choice?
I don't know Sophie's
Choice. Which kid do you let the Nazis kill?
Right,
kind of a thing. Like, that is, like, fuck. This is like, oh no, do I do this thing I wasn't very good at, or do I marry this man who's rich and I love? I mean, he does have 7 kids, but that never seems to be a problem
you could totally do this story in a way where there's more conflict, but you have to make it so that you're invested in that. Yeah. And there really isn't a lot of time spent on it.
Yeah.
In a way, for a movie that's so... doesn't have a lot of plot and story, it goes over too much, because you sort of have the kids, and then you have her and her problems of being a nun, and then there's Christopher Plummer... And, like, he's really Austrian and against the Nazis. And there's actually a lot going on, but it hits each one so shortly and concisely, and it sort of resolves each one. It doesn't really let it flow through. There's a flow, but that's not what the flow is. The conflict isn't a part of the flow.
Yeah, and part of it's because it's a musical. But I would actually argue that, like, Wizard of Oz or definitely West Side Story, which, do you know any of West Side Story?
I vaguely. I mean, 2 different rival games.
It's like a Romeo and Juliet kind of a story, right? Both of those have, like, more intense conflict, I would say. I mean, Wizard of Oz has some, like horrifying, visceral moments.
Well, yeah, it's technically sort of life or death story.
And Sound of Music has the one where they're in the graveyard. But everything...
Way at the end of the movie.
Yeah, and everything leading up to it doesn't make you think they're not going to get... You're not about to watch everyone get shot to death by Nazis.
It's also, not happening.
It's based on a true story.
And you know they're... You just know they're going to live.
Yeah, so...
You can suspend your disbelief for movies, and certainly for Sound of Music, but then it asks you to suspend your disbelief in a different way.
Yeah.
And you can't make that, 180 shift.
But again, maybe that's part of the reason why it was so popular. I mean...
And is so popular.
Mid-60s, were people wanting to just relax and enjoy...
I guess.
I don't know. I don't know that specific time period very well.
Isn't 60s kind of hippies, or is that post-hippies?
I think it's 69 is when everything went to crap, when everyone got shot to death and stuff like that.
Right.
Not everyone.
Not
I
everyone.
mean, like, important political figures.
Right. So maybe this is sort of, people want this because it's starting to go bad?
No.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's hard to say.
There is a hippiness to Julie Andrews running around with her guitar and singing to make the children
that's why
happy.
I think of it, is because this feels like, I don't know how long it took to make this movie. Maybe it took long enough to make that early 60s, it still felt more hippie, hippie-ish.
I don't know.
Well, we'll have to think about that one.
So, we had an interesting sort of discussion off camera while we were visiting our parents about 16 going on 17.
You are 16 going on 17, baby, it's time to think.
It started even before that, because we didn't finish the film in one night, as you mentioned.
Right, we watched the first half,
stopped at the intermission point.
Yeah. And then we went to our parents, and while we were there, we got on this conversation about 16 going on 17, which is the song that the oldest daughter and the messenger have out in the Arboretum. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
That building, that green... It's not a greenhouse, but that glass building outside.
Yeah.
The lines for that song, not great. Putting them on screen now. If you just read what the lines are, no context, for that song, sounds awful.
It made you uncomfortable as we watched it.
It made me uncomfortable as we watched it.
You wait, little girl, on an empty stage, for fate to turn the light on. Your life, little girl, is an empty page that men will want to write on.
It threw me a little bit, because for being sort of this hippie, fun-loving stuff, and certainly it's, made in the 60s, set in the 30s. It's an older style movie, so different, more traditional values. We're, liberal people, I guess, so we're not even towards those values, but you can totally understand the movie. But then 16 going on 17 is like, I'm older and wiser than you, and, she's, a woman to be written on, which just sounds wrong.
But I disagreed with you about this. Yes, taken that way, it's completely wrong.
Taken completely out of context, it sounds awful.
But you need to take things in context. And 16 going on 17, right on my face, yes, that sounds terrible.
To ride on.
His line is, I am 17 going on 18.
Yeah.
You need someone older and wiser telling you what to do. I am 17 going on 18. I'll take care of you.
To me, the song was very tongue-in-cheek. And I understand why those lyrics, taken out of context, yeah, it looks bad, but the movie is not about how women need to be subjugated to men.
Right.
Now, when I want you, this is what you will hear.
Oh, no, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I could never answer to a whistle.
Yeah, it's a love story. I don't know when love stories are regressive and when they aren't at this point. I feel like there's a lot of angst about it. But in this case, it's actually more about her healing him than the other way around.
Yeah, so I mean, so the whole
her being Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews, yeah. So the movie has that feel, and I sort of see what you're saying about that, and I sort of end in our discussion, I ended up relenting because it really is a tongue-in-cheek movie. It's so lighthearted, and while I still feel somewhat uncomfortable by the music,
I need someone older and wiser telling me what to do.
I also don't believe in censorship necessarily, so even though I think the song might be a little...
To me, it was about... I mean, 16 is a hard age, and you know, he was being like, well, I know more because I'm 17 going on 18, which is like...
It really is tongue-in-cheek the way that sounds, and he takes it.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's, even though I feel somewhat iffy on the song, I wouldn't even say somewhat iffy, even though it strikes a bit of a strange chord with me, I appreciate it.
Except, Theo,
we
saw the second half of the film.
We saw the second half
What
of the film.
happens to this young man so full of bravado?
He's just a Nazi. He's a Nazi.
Lieutenant!
Like, I mean, he's not a positive depiction in the film.
No.
And the other thing is, he's overbearing and full of himself, and he's a 17-year-old boy. And the sense that there's this kind of the stereotype of that is wanting to impress the adults and be a man. And in his case, that means becoming a Nazi.
Lieutenant!
Yes.
So, that song could be as much about him and his own overwrought kind of desperate need to be that guy as it is...
and to be masculine.
And
or
he's
to
not
be
portrayed... He's not the hero of our film. He's a Nazi.
Lieutenant!
He's a Nazi.
Lieutenant!
So the second half really lends credence to the fact that, you know, he is just he has that kind of bravado, and he really fits in that way. And although he doesn't shoot them in the second half of the movie, so there is still something in there
he calls for his guys. I mean, he could have gotten them killed.
He could have gotten them killed. So there's
not that we ever thought that was going to happen.
Indeed, there's something in there about emotional turmoil for him, but it really is that he's a Nazi.
Lieutenant!
And that reflects on the earlier song, 16 going on 17.
I mean, you were all worried about how it was, like, gonna affect her. She's fine at the end of the movie. He's a Nazi.
Yeah, he's a Nazi. So, I mean, he's just a Nazi.
Lieutenant!
So, is it a true classic?
I mean, to me, that's such a hard alchemy. I think it's a classic mostly because of Julie Andrews and the songs.
Yeah, Julie Andrews, the songs, the music. The first half of the movie is why it's a classic to me.
Yes.
The second half of the movie is much more flat. A lot of the songs are repeated in the second half, and some of that's fine, but there's much less, like, almost all of the songs are in the first half, and there's the Nun song in the second half.
Climb Every Mountain.
Climb every mountain.
Climb Every Mountain.
It's just, I don't know why, but it
makes me laugh.
It's one of those ones that's aged kind of oddly.
Yeah, and you know, there's a second rendition of Edelweiss, which is pretty good, and you know, the songs that were rehashed are fine, but
I got kind of bored because the emotional arc of the story had already happened.
Yeah, it ended. It ends in the first, like, 15 minutes of the second half.
Yeah, when she comes back.
There's not even any conflict to it because Christopher Plummer, you know, his character just tells the Baroness, like, I don't love you anymore, and she's like, oh, okay, I'm sad and I'm sorry, and then she goes away, and it's so...
It's no use. You and I have been dishonest to both of us.
Doesn't she kind of tell him?
I need someone who needs me desperately. Or at least needs my money desperately.
They kind of do it together. She sort of is like nudges him into it.
I did like her character because the Countess, because they let her be multifaceted almost more than any other character. She actually had a dark side.
She had a dark side, and she does a sort of a mean thing and pushes Marie out.
I guess the Baron has a little bit of a rigid darkness, but it's pretty benign.
Yeah.
Surely you've noticed the way he looks into your eyes. And you know, you blushed in his arms when you were dancing just now. Don't take it to heart. He'll get over it soon enough, I should think. Men do, you know.
It got a little boring and fizzled.
Yeah, it just sort of fizzles in the second half, and really, the characters are a little flat. Like, you like Julie Andrews because you like Julie Andrews almost more than you like Maria.
Yeah.
And
Maria's a little bit...
That's the thing, a lot of the characters are one note. You're right, the Countess has more sides to her. You know, Christopher Plummer's character has some dimensions, but he's so, like, strict, and that's it, and then he becomes so loving, and, like, that's it, and Maria is just sort of hippy-dippy-lovey, and that's great, and, you know, it's kind of fun to watch, but it's very one-note. There's not, and the kids, they're cute, but they're telling you what they tell you what their characters are. You don't really get to see them. Yeah. Like, they tell you, oh, Kirk is, you know, they march out and they say their names and their character, you know, flaw or whatever.
I'm Liesel. I'm 16 years old, and I don't need a governess.
Well, I'm glad you told me, Liesel. We'll just be good friends.
I'm Friedrich. I'm 14. I'm impossible.
And they do that in a couple different ways of kind of calling out each kid's like that. And like the youngest daughter gets some character, the oldest daughter gets some character. Kirk is the one
They go through the trouble of giving them character, but they don't do much else.
Yeah, and they don't...
Which is more than some movies.
It's just more than some movies. Like, they're not completely without character, but again, it's all one note, you know. Yeah. I really don't know anything about Kirk except that he's never wearing pants. He always has those shorts on, and it's like... Yeah. And it looks like it's freezing. Yeah. You know, I don't know. So...
I mean... It's a fun... I don't know that it deserves elevate... I mean, I personally prefer Mary Poppins. I'm not a big musical person. I can't say whether I like it more than The Wizard of Oz or West Side Story.
It's been so long since I saw The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I mean, it's enjoyable.
It's enjoyable. Like
I don't feel like I'm in a place... I mean, classics doesn't even necessarily mean... like, best. I mean, it's almost like the Oscars. Like, how do you even...
Yeah, like
How do you even measure...
Yeah, it's... How do you measure that? The thing is... I'm even thinking about it, like, I will go back and watch Singing in the Rain, because it's a classic. There are plenty of flaws with the movie, but it's a classic, and I like it. I will go back and watch The Sound of Music, because it's a classic. I won't really watch the second half of the movie. Yeah. Like, if thinking about it, if I have the choice, I'll probably just stop watching it halfway through, because it's so... There's no tension in the second half for me to feel the drive to be like, oh, I want to see what happens to the characters again. No, I don't need to.
I would watch the first 10 minutes again, because that swooping shots and her singing are great, but... I mean, I would watch it again if someone else wanted to watch it. It's not one of those movies where I'd be like, oh,
it's not a Sarah movie, really, anyways.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, it's definitely not a Sarah movie, which makes it hard for me to really appraise. It's beautiful. If someone wants to watch it, if I'm babysitting, like, and a kid wants to watch it, there are far worse movies you could get stuck watching. But I'd prefer Mary Poppins.
It has that sort of asterisk next to it.
Yeah. Hey, that said, like, there's no reason not to watch it. I don't feel like we had a good reason,
Yeah, like, I can't say, like...
I'm glad to have finally seen it.
I'm glad to have finally seen it. It's totally worth watching. Yeah. It's just not, like, elevated. It's schizo-elevated. Yeah. It's not really, like, that elevated.
Yeah.
Yeah.